Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark, aka Derringer. Today is Sunday, September 3rd, and you are listening to episode 121 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside 2 news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So as you can see, I am back from vacation. Wife and I were gone for about a week, having some quiet time outside of Planetside 2. And like I said, I haven't played Planetside 2 in a week. A lot of stuff happened while I was gone. I tried my best to keep up with it as it was going down, but I didn't comment on it while I was away, and that's what I'm here to do today. I also took the time to play in the most recent Destiny 2 beta on the PC, and I have some thoughts regarding that as well. So, since I'm back from vacation and definitely missed this stuff, let's roll right into this week's show with not one, but two PTS updates to talk about, some Mohawk news, and finally my Destiny 2 thoughts and the future of Planetside 2. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So as I said, two PTS updates, so let's just do them in order. The first one dropped on August 29th, actually the day that I was leaving for vacation. So like I said, I didn't even get to download the PTS update because that day I was doing packing and mowing the lawn, all that stuff that you do before you actually leave and go out on vacation. So when that stuff all dropped, I was exhausted from the day, and I didn't even download it. I think I played a little Destiny that night instead, just to do something before heading away and not having a computer for the rest of the week. But as I expected, we got a PTS update with the first iteration of the critical mass update, and also, as I had speculated last week, we also got the next set of the combined arms changes, and this time mostly air-related. So first, let's talk about the continents and alert changes that we got in this PTS update. And again, PS4 players, I'm sorry, this is PC side only. PC players, you can go ahead and download the PTS and play around with all these changes that are out there before they come to live. So as we know, extensive changes were made to the way the alerts and continent locking work overall. Now, rather than what they currently cost on live, which is different between the continents, all continents now require 10 points to become lockable to a faction. Now, 8 of those points are gained straight through territory control, and the final 2 are gained through cordium refinement. Now, when any one of the factions hits that 10-point threshold, it's going to trigger an alert which forces that faction to defend their territory. So, let's say, for example, the Terran Republic hits that 10 points before the VS or NC do. They're going to kick off the alert, and they're going to be forced to be the defenders. Now, if they are able to successfully defend their territory and keep what the territory they own for the duration of the hour-long alert, that's something to make sure you know. Most alerts now are longer than that on live, but this alert is only going to be an hour. If they defend their territory for that duration, they're going to actually lock the continent itself. If they fail to defend their territory for the alert, their cordium-based points are reset, but not whatever territory amount that they hold. Now, when the alert ends, rewards are going to be given out based on the faction's place in that alert itself. Now, if your faction triggers the alert and wins the alert, you're going to get 300 ISO 4 and also a loot box reward. If your faction did not trigger the alert, but you do win the alert, you're going to get 100 ISO4 as a reward. And if your faction loses the alert altogether, you're going to get 50 ISO4. Now, honestly, these are okay numbers. I mean, it's going to be tough for the faction who triggered the alert to actually win it, and therefore get that 300 ISO4 and a loot box. But I'd kind of like to see the faction that also triggered the alert, didn't trigger the alert, but wins it, getting a loot box in addition to that 100 ISO4. But like I said, I understand where they're going with this. Obviously, they want to reward the faction who pushes for that full 10 points via territory and courtium refinement, and then is able to push through and win the alert as well. That's the ultimate ending that gets you the most ISO4 and that coveted loot box. But I kind of wish the faction that didn't trigger it could get that loot box as well if they win the alert. But again, I certainly understand why they're doing what they did, and maybe that's not as much incentive for the faction who triggered the alert to push through and win the whole thing. Regardless, as long as you're playing in the alert, you're going to get some ISO4, and that's if you're playing within a set amount of time. So let's talk about the loot box themselves. It's going to contain various cosmetics, consumables, and probably even equipment that can't be found in the depot itself. You're only going to receive items that's both ISO4 and loot if you participate in at least 50% or 30 minutes of the alert. And actually the amount of ISO4 that you're going to get is based on the percentage of time that you spent in the alert. So if you spend 100% or the full hour, you're going to get 100% of the ISO4. So it's obviously easy on a faction who didn't trigger it and wins the alert. You know, if you're only there for 75% of the alert, you're going to get 75 ISO4. Obviously the math is a little trickier if you're the faction who triggered it and won it, or the faction who actually lost the alert itself. But clearly, the real thing here is to be someone who plays in the entire hour that the alert is going on. So for those who don't use it, I know there's a Chrome extension that tells when alerts kick off. I use that. Some of you might want to think about installing that as well, so you can be notified if you're just sitting at your computer doing nothing when an alert kicks off, so that you can actually hop in and play on it. Now, when a faction locks a continent, air support is going to arrive and clear out any remaining combatants, and that's in the form of the Bastion fleet carriers in the sky and a bunch of targeted orbital strikes that are going to come in and kill the combatants left on the continent itself and push you over to the next continent. Again, this is all stuff that I kind of talked about last week after the critical mass update, but this is what we see right now on the PTS as of August 29th. Some of this is going to change when I talk about the August 31st PTS update next. But critical mass wasn't the only thing that came in this update. We also got access to the new NSX Daimyo, and this is a sniper rifle NSX variant. It has a 3-round magazine, and they state that it is a headshot kill potential of a bolt-action sniper rifle, but still retains the flexibility of a semi-auto. The platform has access to 4X through 12X scopes, suppressor, and various rail attachments as well. I have not had a chance to hop on PTS and play around with it. But I do like the fact that it kind of acts as both a semi-auto and a bolt-action sniper rifle. I'm looking forward to playing around with the Daimyo. Next, we got, like I said, had speculated, a second combined arms pass. And this was, like I said, done on air vehicles and various connective things between air and ground. Many of these changes are going to leave air-to-air interactions similar to current live conditions, and they've been revised based on the new resistance and health models that they introduced recently, and they want everyone to know, obviously, that this is not a complete pass, and there is still work to be done. Now, every vehicle, flying vehicle, thing like that, got a bunch of different resist changes to it. I'm not going to go through it all. Some of it was regarding Gatling guns and stuff like that. I'll include a link to the show notes in this week's. I'll include a link to this post in this week's show notes so you guys can go in and check it out if you want to. One big change that we did see was to composite armor, though. Now, on ESFs, it's going to increase by 300 or 10% at max rank. Liberators, it's going to increase health by 500 or 10% at max rank. Galaxies is going to increase health by 700 or 10% at max rank. Valkyries are going to increase their health by 450 or 15% at max rank. And Flashes using composite armor, it's going to increase their health by 450 or 30% at max rank. Again, some composite armor changes to those 5 vehicles. One other change, Skyguard had its indirect damage dropped from 35 down to 20. A little bit harder for Skyguards to shoot down enemies now. The Ranger had some changes as well to its indirect damage on both the Sunder and the main battle tank. Sunder, it went from 38 to 15. Main battle tank, it went from 38 to 25. So again, just like the Skyguard, the Ranger also saw some indirect damage changes as well. And this is clearly to give air a little bit easier time when getting shot at by those 2 vehicles, or vehicle and weapon, actually. Next, the Archer got some changes. It actually got a lot of different little changes. They're not huge, but the view of these changes is to give it a slight decrease in effectiveness versus maxes, but on the other hand, increase its effectiveness versus vehicles. And it also gives an improved effectiveness versus infantry when you actually get a headshot on them. So look forward to a number of changes to the Archer. I don't know that I'm too happy that the effectiveness is decreased versus max units, but I am happy that we're seeing an increase versus vehicles and also headshots on infantry. In the past, I've pretty much spent no time shooting an infantry with the Archer because it's really worthless, and just using it on max units. Really, even against vehicles, I rarely use it. So hopefully this will be a decent increase in effectiveness versus vehicles. But obviously, I'm sure it's not going to be that much. For engineers specifically, they made a change to repairs from rumble seats, and this is whether you're in a harasser or a Valkyrie or the back of a Flash. Those are your rumble seats. The repairs in those rumble seats no longer stack. Now, the biggest change to this is obviously the Valkyrie, because in a Sunderer or in a Flash, there is only one person who can do a repair in a rumble seat. Whereas in the past, in the Valkyrie, 4 engineers could be repairing the Valkyrie mid-flight, and they felt that this made it either too low if they didn't have enough repairs, or too high with 4 engineers. So they're reducing the variance in survivability, and that way they can begin moving towards a platform with a better baseline survivability and stronger weapons overall. So again, it's not worth having 4 engineers in the rumble seats of a Valkyrie anymore, because the repairs in it no longer stack. Next, we had a number of changes to the ESFs. And I mean, we're talking changes to Hornets, air-to-airs, Coyotes. They all got a number of different changes. All the specific ESFs themselves got changes. So on the Reaver, the Mustang, the Vortec, the Kestrel, the Airhammer, and the Breaker rocket pods all received changes. Mostly max and minimum damage ranges and damage on all of them. For the Mosquito, the Needler, the Rotary, the Locust, the Banshee, and the Hellfire rocket pods got a lot of the same changes, just slightly different amounts to each of them. And same thing with the Scythe regarding the Saren, the Maelstrom, the Antares, the Light PPA, and the dual photon pods. Again, a lot of the exact same changes to maximum minimum damage, some magazine size changes as well. Again, I'm not going to read through all of them because it would just absolutely bore you all to tears. But note that I will include these in the show notes themselves, a link that you can actually go and check and read through all the specific changes to vehicles, or the ESFs in this case. Moving on vehicles, Valkyrie also had all its weapons change as well. Hellion, Wyvern, CAS-14E all had either refire rate changes, max damage changes, magazine size changes, resist type changes, things like that. Again, worth reading through the show notes if you use the guns in the Valkyrie a lot. Moving on to infantry, the light assault got their ambusher jump jets. That's the one that propel them forward quickly, but with limited vertical height. It's really just to make you kind of jump from one place to another really quickly. Unlike other jump jets, though, these are on a cooldown instead of being more readily available. The aerial combatant rank 5 benefit actually resets the cooldown, though. So if you get a kill at rank 5, you're going to get a much quicker reset. These are something I'm looking forward to playing around with. And then the other thing that I'm looking forward to playing around with is the engineer item, which is the new nano repair grenade, which was added to the PTS. What that does is it creates a field which repairs 50 health per second in an area, and it sticks to vehicles, but you can only have one active at any one time. I'm really looking forward to playing around with the nano repair grenade, especially throwing that on the back of a max unit as it makes a max crash. Next, they added a whole bunch of different cosmetics as well. I know people like Giz, Ginger Boy, Lore Master, and Steve-O all had a few different cosmetics that were added to the game itself. So if you're looking for some new cosmetics for your Sundry, your Galaxy, or even players, you'll be seeing those on the PTS as well. So that wraps up the PTS in a nutshell. And I was not surprised, like I said, to see that it was both a mix of the critical mass and also combined arms. We know that their goal is to push this critical mass stuff to live as soon as possible. So I really would not be surprised if within a week or so, or even maybe I'm talking about this stuff next week. I certainly would not be surprised if that happens. Maybe 2 weeks is more optimistic in thinking about it, especially because, they dropped the PTS update and then a few days later dropped the next PTS update. And speaking of that second PTS update, let's actually just move right into topic number 2 this week. And topic number 2 is the August 31st PTS. This is actually my wedding anniversary, so I can tell you for a fact that I was not reading this PTS update when it dropped. So there is that. So what changes did we see? And like I said, this is all building on top of the PTS update that had just dropped a few days earlier. So the additional changes that were made is first that the factions are now displaying the current continent control percentages at the top of the map screen, and the UI dropdown has been streamlined to better indicate what requirements are needed in order to actually start an alert. They do want you to know, however, that it is a work in progress. This whole critical mass UI, it's work in progress. They're going to continue to push additional updates to it in the future. Also, because people were playtesting it, they felt that the 10,000 goal and 2 points of the refined cordium was too little for too many points. So it is now moved up to 25,000 refined cordium, and it only requires a single point at this point. And you're now required to own at least 36% of the territory by the end of the meltdown alert, down from the previous 41% territory control. And again, these are just experimental values, and they are likely to be tuned as we move a little further down the road before this stuff actually comes to live. Next, for the light assault, the flight suits fuel capacity ranks got some changes. It used to be 10, 13, 15, and 20%, was changed to 30, 35, 38, and 40% at max ranks. And it's also going to reduce the cooldown time on the ambusher jump jets by 0.60 of a second all the way up to 1 second at max rank. They also changed the cert cost, so rank 3 is now 200 certs, rank 4 is now 500 certs. Those are some pretty big increases to what they were previously. And they felt that the previous benefits didn't influence the player's playstyle to a noticeable degree. leading to a less desirable suit slot option as the flight suit. So they're hoping that this buff is going to make it more competitive and add some functionality for ambusher jump jets. They also had a bunch of little bug fixes that they pushed through, like, for example, the Daimyo's 4X scope was using a wrong zoom level. They're pushing through a speculative fix to a vehicle repair exploit, and this exploit is really one that has been cropping up on the PlayStation 4, not so much the PC side of the game. And I know the vehicle repair exploit, just to jump to PS4 side for a few moments, Nick Silva did tweet that if you see players using the vehicle repair exploit on the PS4, that you should use the reporting tool and report those players, because Daybreak Games is going to come down hard on them. If you are a listener and you're using the vehicle repair exploit on live on the PlayStation 4, I would use this as a suggestion to stop doing that, because you will get reported. I've seen a few posts on the PS2 on PS4 subreddit calling people out by name, putting videos up by name. I would certainly expect that anybody who's been named or there's been a video about you, that you are going to receive a ban at some point, even if it's a 3, 5, 7 day ban. I would not be surprised if that is coming down the pipeline soon. Now, granted, this is just a speculative fix, which means it's on the PTS for the PC side, which means it's not on the PS4 at all. And as we know, the PS4 updates are usually a month or two behind the PC updates. So that means you could have a month or so plus that people could still be doing this on the PlayStation 4, unless they feel that this is a big enough deal that they need to push through and fix it immediately. But either way, if you are someone witnessing people on the PS4 using the vehicle repair exploit, report them. Daybreak Games is looking for this information, so you might as well give it to them. And let's move back to the PC PTS. Ambusher jump jets got a fix. It's no longer boosting for unintended lengths of time while getting kills with aerial combatant rank 5. The meltdown precision strikes are no longer lasting indefinitely. In the first iteration, they just would never stop dropping, which I didn't think was too bad of an idea, but whatever. And ultimately, the skybox will once again return to a normal state after a short time after the meltdown alert ends. Now, unfortunately, that means people could survive some of those blasts and continue to dick around on a continent that's closed. I was kind of interested to see the precision strikes lasting forever. I think that was kind of amusing, and that would be a good change. But hey, maybe it was too resource intensive or causing frame rate issues for players. I'm not exactly sure why they made the change they did, but they certainly did make that change. So again, just a small PTS update. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another one of these this week, as well as they continue to kind of tweak exactly what's going on. And I also checked, and there's no specific date or time that was given for an upcoming playtest. I guess I would just say, if you're not following Planetside 2 on Twitter, that you probably should follow Planetside 2 on Twitter. Or you can always follow me at Instact Podcast on Twitter. And if they do announce a PTS playtest, I will make sure to tweet it out, so retweet it, so everybody who listens to me or follows me gets to see it as well. Again, just a small update, and I do expect to see another one in the future. Moving on to topic number 3 this week was a Reddit post that I saw after I got back from vacation about getting the community invested in the upcoming PTS playtest, which I just said a few moments ago has not been announced. But when it does get announced, there was a Reddit user named 4WRY_Reddit who suggested that there was a good way for us to push people to playing on the PTS and helping the devs gather some good data and insights before releasing it to live. So they pointed out that the analyst helmet has been the long-standing carrot on a stick to get players to participate. However, the majority of us, myself included, have already unlocked the analyst helmet, and maybe there is no current incentive to get us onto PTS to play around with it. So he made a suggestion and said, why don't we kind of move in step with the addition of Paul Giaggio to the team, who had a Mohawk on the most recent dev live stream. And this player suggested maybe we could have Paul dye his Mohawk a different color based on which faction wins during the PTS playtest. And everybody ran with that. We actually got a response from Paul via Roxley. And Paul wrote, okay, real talk, I'm down to dye my Mohawk, but ask that when you tell them I'm game, say, he asked that you try hard to not let TR win, as bleaching it for red might strain his remaining hair. So clearly Paul has a receding hairline issue that affects his Mohawk. So clearly he's hoping that either NC wins so he doesn't have to dye it at all, since, as we know, he has a blue one, or that VS win, because then he just has to dye it purple, which would work with the blue itself. But obviously red would certainly hurt. But the interesting thing on top of this is that other people took over, specifically Fuzzbucket and Gingerboy, two people who have been doing cosmetics. And Gingerboy actually put together some very promising Mohawk prototype helmets, quote unquote. Obviously, just a Mohawk on the head is not a real helmet. But he's been putting together some images, and Roxley actually took that to the art team, and perhaps instead of the analyst helmet, we could see players earning a Mohawk for actually trying this one out, and I think that is an excellent idea. So I'm wondering if that's the reason we haven't had an official release of a playtest coming up, like them saying, here's when we want people online to playtest it. So I'm really hoping that Gingerboy or Fuzzbucket, I believe it's Gingerboy who's doing the majority of the work on this, is actually working hand in hand with the art team and the developers to potentially get a Mohawk to give away to help test. I can tell you, I may not use the Mohawk in game, but it certainly would get my ass in there to play around on the PTS when they're giving that thing away. So I'll include a link to the Reddit post. Add your comments to it, whatnot. I know it's about a week old at this point, but certainly I would love to see something like that come into the game itself. And with that, let's move on to our last topic this week. So final topic is one that was put up by Martfra, who is a player who they just submitted it on Reddit, and I ran across it. And their comments were regarding the recent Destiny 2 beta, Overwatch, and Planetside 2. And in their post, they said that they had tried out the Destiny 2 beta on PC, which I also did. They also played a little competitive Overwatch. They didn't go too high on the ladder, just to play around with it. And they felt sad because Planetside 2 is a game that they love and would prefer over those, but wish that Destiny 2 and Overwatch hadn't made them feel as complete as Planetside 2 does. And by complete, they say an actual story, there's some lore, there's character backgrounds, there's some good team play, meaningful directives, achievements, rewards, seasonal objectives and rewards, some decent anti-cheat features, actual customer support, reliable performance, and as a result, they feel, and I tend to agree, that there are times when Planetside 2 feels like it's in the Stone Age when compared to these. Now, like I said at the beginning of the show, before I went off on vacation, I didn't play Planetside 2, and instead I played a bit of the Destiny 2 beta. And to get into that, I pre-ordered the game. Now, I played the original Destiny on the Xbox One. I played it on the 360 first, and then moved over and played it a bit on the Xbox One. But I enjoyed it, but as I've said in the past, I'm not the best console player. The controller just does not sit well in my hands. So when they announced that Destiny 2 would be coming to the PC, I was very, very excited because obviously I could play it on my platform of choice. I'm a much better player with a keyboard and mouse than I ever will be with a controller. And I'm not going to lie, the game is freaking gorgeous on the PC. And yeah, I only got to play the intro story and the first strike and a little bit of the PvP. I'm not a huge PvPer on Destiny, but I do enjoy the cooperative strikes and things like that. And the opening story, opening mission that you do, the storyline was awesome. I wish Planetside 2's kind of tutorial was something in the same vein as this Destiny 2 open mission, getting you immersed into the game and the lore and everything like that. I would have loved to see something like that to come to Planetside 2. And then playing the strikes on PC, it just all worked so smoothly. I never experienced any lag. I never experienced any jittering. Some of the load times to get in were a little long, but nothing terrible. PvP that I played, everything worked flawlessly. There were no warping players. There were no obvious jitteriness or jagginess to the game. There was no stuttering, no nothing. I mean, Destiny 2 is an absolutely gorgeous game, and much like this Reddit post, it made me sad because in the end I do love Planetside 2. I've done this is on my 121st podcast about Planetside 2 on this platform. I did 104 podcasts under Reachcast, and that's not even counting all the one-offs we did when we interviewed people or interviewed outfits or things like that when the game was still in beta. I've been doing stuff for Planetside 2 for an awful long time, and jumping in and playing Destiny 2, I'm concerned that it's going to start taking up some of my time, and I'm going to dedicate less time to Planetside 2 because it was so gorgeous, because it worked so smoothly and flawlessly, because it had that lore and character background and some really interesting team play, along with directives and achievements that I want in Planetside 2 that just don't exist because we're at the life cycle of Planetside 2 where it's an older game at this point. It's not the new hotness. When Destiny 2 launches for PC on October 24th, I'm worried about what's going to happen to my playtime in Planetside 2 after that. Obviously, I don't want to talk doom and gloom, though. That's in the future. Who knows? Things could change. This massive critical mass, the combined arms update could drop by then. In fact, I would hope that the combined stuff drops either very shortly after Destiny 2 does or before Destiny 2. Well, I think that if they were smart, they'd let the hype of Destiny 2 go for a week or so and then really drop the stuff for combined arms to make the game better in Planetside 2. Otherwise, dropping it before, you're going to get people play it and then leave in droves once something like Destiny 2 does drop. I'm really concerned about Planetside 2 going forward once that certainly happens. And yes, I understand Destiny 2 is not the MMO RPG FPS that Planetside 2 is. It will never have the mass amounts of people that Planetside 2 does. It's a completely different game. But the fact that there's a compelling story, compelling directives, achievements, and rewards, some stuff that maybe Planetside 2 is lacking, I'm worried that we're going to get a large crop of players leaving Planetside 2 to focus on Destiny 2. Again, I don't want to talk doom and gloom at the end of the show itself, but as I've said in the past, I am a realist. I don't sugarcoat things. That's just the way it is. And, I hate to go out on a sour note like that, but that's the end of that topic. So let's move on to this week's housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping, go away. I coming anyway?
All right. Unfortunately, I did not get any email or voicemails or anything like that. But again, I was on vacation, so that's certainly acceptable. I'll expect some emails this particular week. So that's going to be it for this week's show. How can you get in touch with me over the show? As always, you can start by visiting my website, which is www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can send me an email, instantactionshow@gmail.com. Call me, leave me a voicemail. That's 347-4VM-4PS2 or 347-486-4772. Like I said earlier in the show, you can catch me on Twitter @InstActPodcast, or my personal Twitter is @TheDerringer. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. And finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.